It is time for Spirit Daily from spiritdaily.com. I'm Zach Martin along with Michael H. Brown, who authored all kinds of books. You can go to spiritdaily.com and find them. And before we go any further, I have to tell you, I applaud the actions of a priest. I guess it was in South Carolina, or was it North Carolina or in the Carolinas, which denied former Vice President Joe Biden communion because of his hardcore stance as a pro-choice, pro-abortion candidate. And I think that more bishops and priests have to either excommunicate or deny communion to people who support such issues. So the bottom line, I think it's a great thing that priest did for Joe's old soul and to send a nice message.
And Zach, it should be noted that that's the policy of the diocese, that the priest was required to do that the diocese will not let anyone who supports pro-abortion legislation participate in the Eucharist.
And I agree with that. I would also say that if you are a Christian and you vote for pro-abortion candidates, you've excommunicated yourself.
In effect.
I know it sounds harsh, but that's just the way it is. And I do realize that, we all fall short. We all are capable of sin. We all do things out of ignorance. But when you know better, there really is no excuse. I understand if you're in college and you get caught up in certain situations, that all comes into play. But a grown person should know better.
And just one more footnote to that, too. It's extraordinary that the litmus test to be a major Democratic candidate is strident support for abortion right up to birth, basically. It's amazing that the devil could have pulled spiritual blinders over so many eyes. I mean, it's extraordinary, and it's not even vote effective. I think that if you had some Democrats who were at least somewhat pro-life, they'd do extremely well. They'd be very dangerous to the other side.
Of course they would, because anybody that's moderate in their position and supports life and all the good qualities that we can support is a winner in my book.
But it's amazing how Planned Parenthood has duped them. It's just extraordinary, and it's more than just money. It's more than just donations. There's a spirit moving here because, again, you look at the polls, the majority of people in America, whatever, liberal or conservative, don't like abortion. They may say, yes, there should be a right to it under certain circumstances or up to a certain time period, but they don't like it. People don't like it, and yet the Democrats just can't get it.
It's eugenics. It's infanticide. It's a very bad thing for society overall. Look at our birth rate is dropping. We're going to go extinct before too long. It's a problem in Japan and throughout the world. We got a problem here. I think it's apostasy is part of it. People not understanding what they're participating in. When you select yes and you vote for any Democrat at this particular point, you're voting for abortionists, and can't do that. Oh, here's the other thing, too. It's a religion. Planned Parenthood is a religion. It's a demonic religion.
A cult.
We have a separation of church and state, and they're a 501c3. I don't know why they get so much funding. I have a 501c3, too, that's trying to get water bottles to kids so that they don't have to drink leaded water in Passaic. How come I don't get any money? Oh, I'm sorry. They're born. I see. I got it. I understand. Yeah, that's how it goes. Also, and one of the things that really annoys me today on my way in, it took me a little extra time to park, and I'm thinking, what is going on here? I park at Pier 40 in New York City, and I see all these younger people dressed up in costumes getting on a boat at 05:30 to do a Halloween cruise, and I'm thinking to myself, boy, I'll tell you, these people have no priorities. If they worked for me, the unemployment numbers would shoot upward because I'd fire them all. I find it really offensive that people somehow find the time to do these kind of events, causing traffic and causing everybody, a little bit of a problem getting into work as if it's not bad enough. And they're going out on these cruises. And the guys around me here at work, they think, well, what's wrong with that? I go, what do you mean what's wrong with that? What kind of candy asses are you? In my time, when I was a kid, I don't mean to sound like Grandpa here, and I would go to my dad, what kind of costume should I wear for Halloween? And he goes, well, what day of the week is Halloween? Thursday, huh? Well, I'll give you two choices, school clothes or work clothes, right? And that was it.
Right.
After you got done with school or work, then maybe you dressed up as a bum and you went around and got some free candy from your neighbors and try to get as much candy as possible. And I don't mind the fact that little kids dress up as Tweety Bird and Big Bird and butterflies and Hershey Kisses and all those sweet things in life. But it's a celebration. Halloween has turned into a celebration of evil. And I know that you have a take on this time of the year.
Well, I'd just like to add quickly, as far as New York City goes, what about the Greenwich Village Parade every year?
Yeah, that's going to happen it is Halloween as we're doing this, so that means that I think 4 o'clock the streets start to close down.
The images, you can't get more demonic than the images that come out of that parade. I mean, it's just extraordinary. And that imparts a spirit. And that goes back to, gosh, I haven't lived in New York since the late 1980s. And it was big back then. There's lewdness there, as well as tremendous, powerful occult undercurrent. It's not even an undercurrent. It's a tsunami.
Yeah.
So, it's amazing. And that has an effect.
I guess I got to say, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And even if they think that they know what they're doing, they really have no idea. I guess I'm just, getting a little bit of my frustration out here on SpiritDaily.com because I'm applauding what happened with the priest in the Carolinas in regard to Joseph Biden. We bring up the abortion issue, okay? We're touching upon Halloween. And I think that there's people who are mistaken. They think it's just harmless fun. But I would like you to expand upon how it seems like it's harmless fun, but what are some of the bad stories that you've heard over the years as a result of this kind of activity?
Well, by the way, just before I forget, I'd like to add that we had a little bit of a victory this week for Spirit Daily. They're the oldest Catholic church in the United States, Mission San Miguel in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Yes, I know of it.
They were going to allow tonight on Halloween kind of a musical thing that involved the occult and actual kind of rituals and so forth. Again, just kind of being fun. And we posted that story. We found out about it. We posted the advertisement for this event, and the diocese shut it down. So thank God that the oldest church in the United States, one dedicated to the Archangel Michael, is not going to have an occult ritual tonight.
Yep.
Stories on Halloween, again, look at how many of the images are demonic, as we've discussed before. When you have the image of someone holy, that imparts holiness. That brings a grace. When you have something representing the dark side, it brings the dark side in. People don't seem to understand this, but dressing a kid as a demon can actually have an effect, psychological as well as spiritual. So it's the devil's Christmas as far as I'm concerned. And even there's this former devil worshiper. We have a story about him on today. He's saying that this is, it's not just some kind of goofy thing that we do with these costumes and trick-or-treating, but he said that we're saluting and honoring the devil and that October really is witchcraft month.
One woman that I work with, she has a good point. She doesn't believe in Halloween whatsoever. That's her Christian belief and perspective, and I honor that and I respect that. I don't either. I don't like how it's celebrated. It is All Souls Day in the West, and in the Eastern calendar, we're not even in October yet. We are in October. Anyway, having said that, she makes a good point. She used to use the subways at night. And on Halloween, it was one of the scariest times because if someone did something and they're dressed in a costume, you cannot figure out who is that did the crime. So that adds to it. And I think there's going to be a point where, again, something else that is bad is going to happen, and that will make a political reaction in laws, and people won't be able to dress up in anything when they go on using mass transit. I think it is kind of against the law. And then the last time I parked at Pier 40 on Halloween a couple of years ago was the terrorist attack, where that truck, I remember it specifically, it was rented from a local hardware chain. And I saw as the truck was going to make a left. And I thought to myself, that is really odd. What is going on? And I just thought about it a little bit, and I just moved on. There was a woman with a baby carriage, little baby in it, and she was with somebody else, and they were going to the west side. It was a sunny day, and she said to her friend, I wonder which way should we go? I go, make a right. Right was the opposite direction of the attack. Some voice inside of me said, tell her to make a right. Normally I wouldn't do that. I go right, go up north. I think you'll have a better time. And it was the south point where the attack took place, right over by the entrance of the Battery Tunnel.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were kind of witness to it, or to the the event that led up to it.
Yeah, not only and so they ended up having the parade anyway. But as I was driving home, my wife calls me up. She goes, "Are you okay?" I go, "What do you mean?" She goes, "There was some sort of shooting." I go, "Oh," and I like a typical New Yorker go, "Oh, is that all, a shooting?" But then we found out more information. Yeah, but that little voice inside of me, and I left just at the right time, and then I came back the next day, and they were all crosses up with the members of the soccer team that were all murdered on that day. And it was a somber thing. I took pictures, and it's amazing how people move on and they forget these events. And you're right. I think it was also the evil, spirits and the whole dark kind of forces that seem to be prevalent this time of year added into that attack. And I was just thinking this morning, now that I'm parked there again, what's going to happen today? I'm to the point, just as a sidebar comment, I'm to the point where when I arrive to New York and I park my car, when I come out of the building, I look at all the building tops. You know why I look at the building tops?
Well, yeah, you're looking out for something coming by way of the air.
But I'm looking for snipers.
Uh-huh.
I'm assessing all the dangers around me. I do a 360 assessment, as if I was in the Army still. And I look to the left, I look to the right, I look up, I look down, I look behind me. I'm like always, and if somebody's walking behind me, I'm always making a glance back at what's coming on. I pay attention to the vehicles around me, see where they're going. So whatever has been happening over the past few years, I know that for whatever reason, and maybe it's because I have this deep relationship with Christ, I think I get a little bit more wisdom as a result, and I'm also have a heightened sense of what's going on around me.
There's no question about that. I remember even in 9/11, there were so many people who got promptings in the spirit to stay away, or that they were going to be involved in some way.
Well, guess what? I decided to take my vacation that week.
Yeah.
And I remember that Tuesday morning. Yeah, I'm very close to there. And my father-in-law, luckily, he escaped with his life, but I don't even want to talk about some of the sights, some of the smells, and some of the things that happen ex post facto. Let's go back to spiritdaily.com. And one of the articles that you have up here, Archdiocese used mystic during house exorcism. Let's talk about a little bit of the exorcism, and then we have the Lady of Laredo I'd like to get to.
Well, it's kind of an amazing story. I mean, you had this. We have a special report. We do a special report every month, and ready to come out with another one. But this one, currently on, has to do with what they call the demon of Brownsville Road near Pittsburgh, a suburb, where this one fellow who was a county commissioner. He was very chairman of the county commission. He was very big locally. Bob Cranmer found himself in this big old house with his family, and it turned out to be horribly haunted. We don't have time to get into all the phenomena, but it was amazing. I mean, even blood-like liquid spattered on walls time and time again. Never mind apparitional figures and noises and poundings and so forth. One of his sons committed suicide eventually, which may or may not be linked. He thought that it may have played into this, but a terrible haunting. And he went to the Diocese of Pittsburgh for help. Through the mayor of Pittsburgh knew the bishop, so he knew the mayor of Pittsburgh, and his father Ron Lengwin helped out. Called him up, but he told Bob that he couldn't come to the house itself, that he was not going to come to the house itself, but advise him on the phone. And this is kind of peculiar, because when a priest approaches a haunted situation, an exorcism, they have to show up usually. You know that as a priest. And it turned out that he was, and he would consult Bob sometimes on a nightly basis. He would tell him, okay, go here and there, cover this mirror. It might be weeks. This is going to take a long time, and so forth. And then he would describe to Bob in intricate detail the interior of his house, like clairvoyant type ability. It turned out that he was working with a Catholic mystic, a woman he had known for nearly 40 years, and now knows, he told me, for 42 years. And this mystic was offering all this advice and all of this remote viewing of what the place looked like. Well, this is problematic. It's problematic. First of all, why would he not go to the house? Why would she tell him that? And secondly, did it add fuel to the fire? After the priest and the mystic were involved in a situation, it still went on for 2 years until the archdiocese reached out to a real official exorcist from the Archdiocese of New York, Father Labar, who came in one session, got rid of the majority of the issue there. And so it's an interesting account, how they used the mystic, and I'm not against mystics, but I think we have to be very careful, and I'm not sure in this case that it helped the cause.
In the Orthodox Church, mysticism can be part of it, and it's just a holy mysticism. And there's a distinction between that.
Yes.
Some people are just on a different spiritual plane. For instance, I'll give you an example. Padre Pio would actually levitate at times because he was in so much joy, and then he had the stigmata. So that's more of the mysticism that I'm talking about in relation to being a priest or a holy person, whether Orthodox or Catholic. So there's an example of a healthy mysticism, if you want to call it that. Now, in regard to the different apparitions that we've seen, Lady of Fatima, Medjugorje, which you were just at, and that was a great story to share with us. It seems like there's one and they all pretty much have the same message that they deliver to the people that are involved. Before we go over to the Lady of Loreto, and you tell me a little bit about that, what's the one that's in Japan? Because it seems like the one in Japan syncs up with the Lady of Fatima.
Yes, and just before that, just one other note. I'd like to say that Father Lengwin is a very good priest, and it was very good of him to try to help out in this case, and that the woman mystic he was working with is no doubt a wholly devout person. But you have to be careful because even a mystic can have holy phenomena and also things that are deceptive. So we have to discern even the great mystics.
Well, and also a priest is ordained. Part of the what is it called? The orders. There's various orders. There's orders, okay? And the minor orders, that's what they are, one of which is exorcist, excuse me. So you have to really be an ordained priest to be an exorcist, especially in the Roman Catholic Church and according to their magisterium, as well as in the Orthodox Church. Although, you see, in one essence, when we do a house blessing and frequent confession, baptism, and all of those sacraments is an exorcism in a way when you think about it, right?
Yes.
You understand? All right.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, you're right. We got to be very careful how we use mystics. Mm-hmm. Baptism as well.
Now on to Akita. Yeah, in 1973, on an anniversary date of Fatima, you had a deaf nun in Akita, Japan, Sister Agnes Sasagawa, who had an experience before the statue they had in her chapel there, a statue of the Virgin Mary, in which she heard the Virgin Mary speak to her, even though, again, she was deaf, and gave her a message, and then gave her another message or two in subsequent months. The message was rather dire. It said, in effect, that fire will fall because of the sins of humanity. It said that there was coming a time when there would be bishop against bishop and cardinal versus cardinal. We've seen that for sure.
Yep.
And it certainly, in other disasters, one third of humanity would be wiped out, basically, or was it more? I think at least
at least a third. I think biblically it talks around that number, but yeah, a lot of people.
And And at any rate, matter of fact, I'm going to have an update on it in the next special report. But yeah, I mean, they were incredible warnings, and they seem to tie right into Our Lady of Fatima. Seem like kind of an addendum, if you will. But her message has not been really. It's been accepted by the church partly, but not as much perhaps as it deserves to be, because by the way, I think it's 2/3 of humanity, because the church is afraid of these apocalyptic-like pronouncements that are too, quote, scary, unquote. But we live in times that are crazy, and it's intensifying.
I think it's important to deliver the apocalyptic message and to discuss the book of Revelation, because it can bring people to God. It can bring people to Christ. I can remember listening to Billy Graham talk about this French priest who, for weeks, would preach from the book of Revelation, and it got people to repent and to change their ways, to get them to accept Christ. Jonah, he goes to Nineveh. Nineveh was probably a lot worse, or just about the same as we are nowadays. And when they got the message, they repented. They knew that if they didn't repent, bad things were going to happen. I think it's our duty and obligation as preachers and priests and members of the body of Christ to let people know that bad things are going to happen if they don't change their ways, because it's through hearing that we are saved. Now,
but by the way, just one other clarification. I just fact-checked myself, and what she said, Sister Sasagawa, was, "Fire will fall from the sky and will wipe out a great part of humanity." So, you can call that whatever.
A third, 2/3, it's still a great part. I mean, a third of humanity is it's a lot of people. That's 30% of the population.
That's right.
With these operations that we have, you have Medjugorje, which, thank goodness, I can finally say without any problems. I think it's the spelling that gets me. The Lady of Loreto, why don't you tell us a little bit about that? It's one of the bulletins that we have at spiritdaily.com.
Well, you have this house in eastern Italy. I've never had the pleasure. I want to very much. I've never had the pleasure of visiting it. It's on our wish list. But back in the 13th century, according to tradition, the Holy House of Mary, where she was born, where she was raised, where the angel came, the Annunciation occurred, Jesus Christ, in her womb, was transferred by angels from Palestine to Italy, again in the 1200s.
Wow.
And, it sounds implausible, but so do a lot of things that have occurred down through the centuries that are miraculous. It sound equally implausible. I don't know. I mean, how do you authenticate something like that?
I don't know. I mean, God and the saints are not confounded by distance and time and space and all of that stuff. So anything is possible. The important thing is, if people go there and it renews their faith, if they repent, if they become believers, then it's a good thing in my book.
Well, I believe until there's a reason not to. And now the Pope has announced, he's decreed a formal feast day of Our Lady of Loreto. It's going to be on the Roman calendar as an optional memorial, they call it in the Catholic Church, to be celebrated on December 10th. So that's a good thing, and I'd love to go there because I hear from many people that it's a place of tremendously powerful grace.
It's an interesting thing about the Mother of God, the Theotokos, and here's the story as I get it for the Dormition. Mary, the Mother of God, actually physically dies, and after a couple days later, she's assumed into heaven. And I don't know how it happened. It's one of those miracles, but all the apostles were present, with, I believe, as the legend goes, with the exception of Thomas, who didn't see that happen. But he hears about it. I guess he believes what happened to Mary. Remember, he's the one that doubted the resurrection of Christ. But everybody, all those apostles were at her bedside as she's being taken into heaven, including St. Paul. Isn't that a fascinating one? We should probably look into that next August. Mm-hmm. And go over the Feast of Dormition a little bit and what actually happened at the time. And you were referring to Mary's parents, or Joachim and Anna, were the parents of Mary. They're saints of the church as well. Very fascinating. I love talking about all this kind of stuff. Now, what about this other story that you have, the Lady of Lujan? Did I say that right?
Well, I can't. I'm no expert at that. There's so many of that, but this is something that is in Argentina, and again, this Pope Francis is very, very Marian. He has a devotion to this particular one, who's Our Lady of Luján is the patroness of Argentina, and so he blessed two statues of her recently that were then sent back in a copy of the original, as well as I think probably they were both copies, because the original statue is in Luján. You don't travel with that, but it represents a miracle that occurred, and that still occur, where people are healed around this old statue of the Virgin Mary,
Mm-hmm.
which she wears kind of a blue and white mantle. And I've never been there, so again, I'm no expert at it. But one more means of grace. These are powerful situations. Anytime I've ever gone, I'd love to go to the House of Ephesus in Turkey, where some people claim the Virgin Mary lived out her final years and died there in what is now, like I said, Turkey. But tremendous grace, a lot of miracles, Our Lady of Luján. And, Zach, there are a lot of apparitions approved by the Catholic Church in South America that most Catholics have never heard of.
Well, I think Mary has a special relationship with the poor.
Absolutely.
Yep.
When I went to Cabello, Rwanda, to look at a church-approved apparition site there, it was... And looked further into this apparition of the Virgin Mary, she told the kids there, the visionaries, that she had chosen to come to Cabello, which is hours from the capital of Kigali, in the middle of nowhere, because it was one of the last pure places on earth, as the way she put it. And Zach, one of the reasons it's poor, it's pure, is because it's poor.
Mm-hmm.
When you go there, it's amazing. The kids are wearing the same T-shirt for 6 months to a year.
The Patriots T-shirts when
right.
the Giants beat them,
and they've been mended and remended, and they've got no shoes. And boy, they just follow you if you'll give them just a mint. They'll have 20, 25 kids following you everywhere you go. So she does. And we look at Fatima. They were poor shepherds at Medjugorje. It was a very poor, simple, peasant-like place. So yes, that's true. She does like that simplicity and purity.
Holy Theotokos, pray for us. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us.
That's right.
I want to move along right over here. I know that you wanted to talk about the real Halloween, so we'll get to that. And then you touched upon something at spiritdaily.com that I'd like to touch upon a little bit. And it's nothing major. It's not hard to talk about, but I have a take on this. So let's talk about the real Halloween.
Well, that was just a little thing we had on today from the mailbag. Somebody said, look, this is the real Halloween, in an email to me this morning. And it was showing a pentagram all lit up in a neighborhood in front of somebody's house. That's what really Halloween is about. It's the devil's Christmas. And as we've discussed previously, it's become bigger and bigger. This year, where I live in Palm Coast, Florida, we're not seeing as many decorations as some years, but I don't know, in Manhattan, is it still as big as it's been in recent years?
You know what I think? Here, I'll just get to the brass tacks of the issue. I think it's like the pagan worship of Diana or Donna, whatever the female version of the sex goddess was. I think women dress up provocatively. They go on these cruises, and it's just a hookup cruise. That's basically what it is. Certain neighborhoods, they might decorate a little bit, but it's not over the top. Usually you'll find are people dressed in various costumes. The women, for the most part, dressing seductively. Does that make sense? And the men, whatever. I mean, I just pretty much look in the opposite direction. And when someone says, what am I for Halloween? I go a disc jockey because nobody knows what we look like. Or
well, Well, when it comes to real Halloween, again, let me refer to that former satanic high priest that I mentioned at the beginning of the show, John Ramirez. And he says, look, some of the things that he once practiced on Halloween included having a demonic wedding. This is a direct quote from him. He says, animal sacrifices, rituals, and many people who were high-ranked devil worshippers, mediums, warlocks, and witches came to my wedding because they were able to channel demons and principalities through their bodies to baptize and bless my wedding. And they choose to do these rituals, especially on days like Halloween. It is not just trick or treat, and people really should protect themselves, invoking the Archangel Michael on a day like today, and of course any day, because the times are getting dark and pretty evil out there.
Yeah, I agree. Every day you should be praying to Saint Michael as well as your guardian angel to protect you from evil.
That's right.
Now, one of the things I like to talk about is how to have a happier life. And you have an article, Despair Causing Decrease in Life Expectancy. Now, there's a lot of reasons for all of that. Number one is anxiety. Anxiety causes a lot of trouble. And I think anxiety comes from a lack of trust in God. I have to battle with that all the time because, like everybody else, it's getting harder and harder to make ends meet, especially if you have, let's say, a special needs child at home, or you might have been out of work for a long time. You're not making as much money as you used to, or you're in your 50s and 60s trying to find a new job. You just got out of college and you have all of this student debt. And then what people usually do, and the reason why they're so unhappy, is because they don't know who they are. Another thing that adds to the problem is social media and a distortion of reality, where I used to joke about this. The Real World on MTV, you might remember that show, Michael. Where,
I don't.
Well, everybody was really good looking. Mm-hmm. Everybody had a really great apartment, and everybody
was
having a really good time. But
That's
what nobody had? A real job.
Yeah.
That's not the reality. The Kardashians are not reality.
That's well said. And that's why I have never done anything with Facebook or these other media. I mean, we use it just minimally for Spirit Daily. We do have post stuff every day, but it's basically, look at how great my life is.
Yeah, taking a picture with like how all the good times that you're having.
And some of the things that happened through it, like this one, we didn't use it today. It's too dark. But there was a woman. My wife Lisa told me, she was reading me the article, who got her boyfriend to commit suicide, sending him thousands of text messages on how he was worthless and should kill himself and so forth. He killed himself the day before college graduation, just when his parents had come into town. So there's a lot of nastiness on the internet and so forth,
and bullying and trafficking.
That's right.
Yeah,
but it gets back to your thing on pride. That look at how great I'm doing, and I'm going to push you around, and it's my way or the highway.
Well, it's pride that caused the mess in the first place. Lucifer wanted to be greater than God. You had Adam and Eve. They wanted to. It was a lack of faith, really. They wanted to be like God too. That was the trick of it. Who wouldn't want to be like the Father God, right? So it's one of those things. It's an Achilles heel.
And you don't want to talk about coincidences. Lastly on Halloween here, is that there's a Halloween. They call it the Halloween asteroid. This asteroid, if you can see it on the front of Spirit Daily today, it looks like
spooky.
A skull.
Yeah.
And that came close to Earth, I think it was a year or so ago, right around this time of year. And also, right in outer space recently, Hubble telescope took this picture of that looks really like a Halloween mask of they took it of I don't know what galaxy. I think it was two galaxies coming together. It looked like two glowing eyes. But a lot of coincidences to give us signs of what is really behind it.
A spooky face in space is the article that you can click onto that. Then you have the archives of Halloween asteroid that's on spiritdaily.com. I'm sorry. And I'll tell you, there's a lot of great stories. You could spend hours just going from one story to another story. Then if someone wants to send you an email, like they have a question about matter of faith or, one of your books, do you have an email that people can find you?
There's a box in the left.
Okay.
Contact us. I have to admit sometimes it's been hard to keep up with the mail. I think I've got somewhat of a grip on it now, but We've been doing this 19 years and have gotten tens of thousands of emails.
It's really a great site, and I think we're just running out of time now. So next week, I'm sure that we'll have more breaking news at spiritdaily.com. Don't forget, you can get the books. And do you have some movies that are available? I can't remember.
Well, we have DVDs in our bookstore.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and we have a new book out on the warning on prophecy, as well as another book by an exorcist with whom we're in touch. It's called The Devil's Role in the Spiritual Life. So they may want to check out those books also.
Okay, great. Good job. All right. For spiritdaily.com, I'm Zach Martin. Thank you, Michael H. Brown.
Well, God bless you. See you next time.